Jenna, just first off, thank you so much for having us. We're always happy to be here and help raise awareness. And thanks for everybody for listening ahead of time. Today, we're going to be focusing on marine mammal harassment, specifically cases and audience perceptions in Central California. Although we're going to be also talking about, because our range is expansive, a bit about Northern California as well. So I don't mean the headline to be a bit construed there. So just very briefly, a bit about our mission. We advance global ocean conservation through three main pillars: rescue and rehabilitation, scientific research, and education of marine wildlife. We are the world's largest marine mammal hospital of its kind. We cover 600 miles of California coastline and inland areas stretching from Mendocino County to the southern tip of San Luis Obispo County. We also have a hospital for the endangered Hawaiian monk seal in Kona, and we have response operations on the Big Island of Hawaii, as well as Maui. And there's a very adorable harbor ship. We'll get into why that gets them into trouble, though, in a second. In terms of sharing action, when we think about one of our main pillars, it's the education component. Getting ahead of myself here. And so when we're really taking a look at this, we recognize, and we've heard so many of the speakers today about our shared ocean environment, and that the backyard that we share, we're sharing with incredible, amazing marine mammals and other wildlife. And so the goal really here is to be able to advance this, but also make sure that future generations are as lucky as we are to have the California coast, that it's there for the future. So when we're looking at addressing negative human interaction, it seems like a big topic, right? And it seems almost too much to scale. Adam and I have been at the center both a long time, despite maybe what our age looks like. Adam started in 2009 as staff and a volunteer. I also wear the same hat. I started when I was 14 back in 2004, and have since gone from a media background at CBS while I was volunteering to now doing PR for the last 8+ years. When we look at interaction, it's how is it defined, right? How do we even tackle this or go about it? And so the three main buckets that Adam and I are going to go through a bit today are data collection and analysis, audience research, and community engagement. As we're hearing with everyone and from the talks today, all three are really necessary in order to build a bigger picture to how do we try to come to some sort of a solution. So let's start kind of taking a deep dive in. In general, and we have seen our ups and downs at the center in terms of patient load. Last year in 2022, we rescued and admitted 576 marine mammal patients to the hospital in Sausalito. You may be aware we have a smaller triage facility here in Moss Landing. We have another down in Morro Bay. The 576 number might jump out at you, but for some of us that have been at the center for a long while, to put that into context, back in 2015, we rescued 1,800 marine mammals, including 1,000 California sea lion pups alone, which many of you might have been aware was part of the sea lion tsunami caused by 3 years of basically the ocean having a fever, also known as the blob, but then a 4th year added on that was an El Nino year in 2016. So not to diminish the 576 because it's still very important, but just for perspective there, really the presence of human interaction here is recorded for a significant number of patients. You might be jumping ahead and seeing the total number below. But this is coming through our hotline. We have a hotline that gets 10 to 15,000 calls every year about potential marine mammals in distress. And so our role is to be able to send out teams to evaluate, is this animal sick? Is this animal injured? Is it just resting? And so this information was critical for Adam and I to really document just how big this process of collecting, how do we define harassment? Because this number below, this 150 total animals, this is from 2022, rescued, experienced direct negative human interaction. I want to qualify that the 150 number, that's a conservative number. We went line by line looking at, just because there were dogs in the area or there were people, a busy beach with a marine mammal resting there, that did not necessarily qualify as one of these numbers. What did was a direct report of somebody calling the hotline, giving a specific action that was seen, or one of our trained volunteer responders going to go rescue an animal and documenting that number. But I can't significant enough that the fact that if we did the calculation there in a year with 570 plus animals, it equated to basically 1 in 4 coming to the hospital experienced either a contributing factor, or it was in addition to malnutrition and entanglement, a marine disease. That's staggering. I've been at the center for 19 years as an animal care volunteer. I've seen the ups and the downs. I think Adam and I both, when we went into this process with eyes wide open, it never really occurred to us that that number would be that high. I just kind of shooting from the hip here, for lack of a better term, it's like maybe 10%, 15%. The 25% really jumped off the board at us. And when we characterize these actions, we're really looking at 3 main things: touching and moving of marine mammals, crowding of marine mammals, whether it's selfie, whether it's folks just really engaged, wanting to do the right thing, but not really knowing what they should be doing and the potential impact it's having, as well as dog chasing and bites. When we break this down further, which Adam's going to, these are really the 3 main buckets of the types of interactions that we documented. And all of this is about being strategic. We now have a baseline going forward that we can do year over year analysis to understand where are the hot spots, what are these interactions, where are they occurring, and then how, from a public engagement point of view, can we start making a difference. So when we look at the 600 miles, and again, Del Norte County excluded, and then Santa Barbara County south, we're really looking at Mendocino County up north to the southern tip of San Luis Obispo County. You can see the hotspot areas of where these interactions took place. So the San Francisco Bay Area, Monterey and Santa Cruz County, where roughly 40% of our patients are rescued every year that come to our main hospital in Sausalito, as well as the San Luis Obispo coastline. And I want to be very clear that each of these areas, the problems, there's nothing that's necessarily equal. What impacts, for example, the North Bay, we saw an outsized share of illegal pickups of young harbor seal pups. There's a lot of, and this was something that when Adam and I would go down to, as a former media member, but engaging, the media and trying to raise awareness, harbor seal pups, maternal separation, mom's foraging just off the beach, right? And the person coming up to it is now that mom's basically going, see you later, not going to come back. It's dependent. Without the Marine Mammal Center stepping in, that pup's not going to be able to make it. But those impacts were not necessarily seen as much in Santa Cruz, Monterey County, San Luis Obispo County than we previously thought, according to the data. It was very North Bay, Marin County centric. And so when we base this out in terms of some of these hotspots, when we break it down by county, Santa Cruz County slightly out-edged Monterey County, with San Luis Obispo County third in terms of 1, 2, 3, in terms of the top counties that we're responding to both locally and in inland areas. And specifically, I'm just going to break this down since this is a Central Coast audience mainly. City of Santa Cruz, Live Oak, City of Monterey were the 3 hotspot areas for primarily California sea lions. And the big key here is that our busy season is roughly tied around with pupping season for seals and sea lions. March through June, it's hopping in Sausalito. We could have 150 to 200 animals on site at any one time. But what we found is that these types of interactions, the same amount of interactions that were occurring in April, May, June, it was just as bad in September, October, November, when our counts are not necessarily as high in terms of the number of rescues, but oftentimes we're responding to sicker, older animals. This most recent leptospirosis outbreak that some of you might be aware of, right, where we're north of 150 animals that have come into the hospital as a result of it. Is that a correlation there to them being more down, people coming up close? Maybe they're not even turning to pay attention to your presence about distance. So some of that just in terms of additional context. And now I'm going to turn it over to Adam to really dive into a bit. I didn't mean to go general overview, but this is why I have my partner in crime here to dive into the data even further. So Adam, I'll let you take over here.
So you've seen from a lot of the different talks, there's a lot about the data collection. You got to know what the problem is if you're going to try and come up with it. We now have that data. We know where the harassment's taking place. We know when it's taking place. We know what types of animals they're engaging. So we can start to come up with some solutions, obviously. Now, Dakota actually had an interesting line in her thing, motivation matters. So let's start with figuring out, why are they harassing these animals? Why are there dogs off the leash on those beaches? Why are people getting too close? So we actually sent people out to the beaches and collected data for beachgoers in kind of the two big hotspots around Santa Cruz and Monterey. So let's ask people, why are they out at the beach? Have they seen marine mammals? What would they do in different situations? And then we also did online surveys. And we monitored this by residents and tourists, thinking that maybe there are going to be some differences here. And we could go for the next 2 hours on what the data has shown. We're going to put out probably a 50-page report in around 3 weeks once it's all finally analyzed. But I wanted to pull out one in particular, because for a lot of us, and actually David Kayak Connections kind of mentioned this, it falls into two categories usually. People don't know they're hurting the animal, so they just want that good experience. They don't realize the impact they're having, or people are intending to do it. And for the most part, the assumption has been for these animals, it's not that people are actually trying to hurt them, because a lot of times they call us as well. So on the phone, we're like, okay, where are you? Like, what are you saying? It's like, well, I'm sitting next to it, petting it. It looks like it needs help. And reports of people trying to feed things gummy bears. And it's like, it looked hungry. And I was like, thank you for the intention, but please step away from the animal. So with all this data, there was one that came out, and this is the only graph that we're actually going to show you. And the battery just did? Yeah, there we go. So we asked the question, would you approach an animal? And then we asked the follow-up question, would you approach the animal if you knew it would hurt the animal and if you knew it was illegal? And it turns out that between residents and tourists, close to 30% of people said they would still touch an animal even if they knew it would hurt the animal or if it was illegal. I put the illegal things to the side, and I think our law enforcement person has already left. But we have found that has not actually been a great tactic, because people just go like, well, are you enforcement? You're like, well, actually, I'm an educator. They're like, cool, I'm going to feed this animal gummy worms. But this gives us a lot of insight that we can't just go to people and say, hey, do it for the animal. Because they've already said, and this would be underreported because usually people will try and be nice to the people asking the survey question and look better, that they would still do it. They do it to take a photo. They do it to have fun. They do it to have a memorable experience. So we need to really shift our tactics here if we want to cut out the harassment that's taking place. And there is good intentions here. They think they're trying to help, but there's still a lot that we're not addressing with some of the messaging that's out there. So all of this is a bit of a downer. We acknowledge that. So what can we do about it? Well, we now know where the hot spots are. So let's not blanket campaign certain things. Let's be really intentional. We only saw harbor seal harassment in Marin and Sonoma counties. We did not see a single case in 2022 of harassment of a harbor seal in Monterey County. In terms of the animals that we rescue, again, there's a lot of harassment that happens out on the beaches. We never find out about it. The animal doesn't get reported, whatever it is. But if harbor seals are on every promotional material that's put out in the Central Coast, we're probably not addressing the problem of sea lions in November that people are crowding around. So what we wanted to try and do is figure out a few things. Let's be really intentional and figure out what is the action and why they're doing it. Let's figure out the right messenger as well. And this is actually the thing that I love the most about what Dick does within the fishing community. I cannot go to the Dungeness crab fishing community and accomplish very much at all. I will be laughed out of the room, and for very good reason. But Dick is an ambassador, he's a role model, and he's able to have those conversations, and he's willing to have those tough conversations with policymakers. He's willing to have those tough conversations with environmental groups so that we can come together and then there's a unified language that goes out. That's what we want to do, whether it's with small business owners, whether it's with other kind of collaborative recreational groups that are in those areas, whether it's with policymakers. And let's test some new messaging as well. And this is all relatively early work. We don't have a full story to tell you, but I want to highlight a couple things that we have done and open up the opportunity for future collaborations afterwards. So whether it's things like getting the news out there, we always used to kind of go out every single busy season. So springtime when our numbers come up, that's when the news would tend to be more open to talking with us, because we could say there are 150 animals on site. Well, let's take advantage of that opportunity and that interest, but let's also try and do things at different times of the year so that people actually are hearing the story when it's what's happening. Let's also figure out who the messengers are that we can show a united front on this. So whether it's working with groups like Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuaries and having them on these media stories with us, they can carry a different perspective. We've got now a couple different angles within that story. Morro Bay Paddle Sports was a group down in San Luis Obispo that wanted to partner with us. They wanted to do more. Well, let's help them try and figure out a way to do that, and let's show a win-win. We can always improve all of those things, but let's bring them to the table and offer something in return for that as well, if they're going to help us monitor good behavior and help be those role models. And let's test out new language. When it came to dogs, honestly, it was really tough. People want to have their dog off leash. There's good reason for them to do that. So saying leave seals be, don't hurt that seal, it wasn't doing anything. Let's flip the script entirely. The reason why you should have your dog on that leash on that beach is to protect your dog, because seals have very sharp teeth. They also have zoonotic diseases, things that your dog can get. So don't do it for the seal, do it for your dog. It's not safe seal, safe dog, it's safe dog first. Let's figure out their values, go to that, and then if they wind up doing the right behavior, even if it's not with seals in their best interest, they're doing the right behavior. And that's the only thing that really matters. So making signage, making campaign things, sharing those with colleagues, whether it's folks up in Sonoma County that help pilot this, folks up in the Mendocino campground area, working with other folks to identify what is the problem. If it's dogs in your area, let's have a specific campaign for dogs. Is it selfies? Let's work with how we can figure out the right messengers for that. So if you are working in any of these spaces, please come up, let us know. As we start to take some of this data, think about ways that we can move it forward and have that unified voice that really targets the actions that we know are problematic. Just a big thank you. We've got a lot of people in this room that have partnered with us, and on Zoom, obviously, it's absolutely a group effort when we think about the 15,000 phone calls that come in, managing that data, people that are out there on the beach that are helping to collect this data as well. And hopefully many of you that are listening that are going to help support this and collaborate with us moving forward. So with that said, we've got our contact information up here. Please don't hesitate, come up, talk with Giancarlo and myself. If this sparked any interest, you've got ideas, you've got areas that you've seen things, and we look forward to the questions a little bit later on. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.